Are they on now?
I got it.
Annie.
The mute all button was pushed.
All right, next on our agenda is to elect a vice chair. Do I have any nominations for the vice chair?
Nominate Ken Felger.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded for Ken. Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? If there's no other nominations, all those in favor of Ken as vice chair signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 2 is setting the meeting dates for the calendar and the times for starting. Is there any discussion on that? Has everybody been able to look at the calendars? And is there any
I would like to
conflicts?
recommend that we move April 3rd to April 10th.
I would too, because I will be gone.
Is that a possibility to be able to get the room?
We should be good at this time, I would think.
As part of that, would we then want to make one other move for that April? So instead of running meetings 2 weeks apart, we could also then move the April 24th to May 1st.
Is there Mr. Chair, is there any thought as to whether, given what seems to be a trend in volumes as of late, that having 2 meetings is necessary that month if we move it more to the middle?
Well, the only thing from a staff standpoint is we generally try to avoid back-to-back meetings. So the 17th is one of those that gets really tough from our office's standpoint.
Yeah, I'm not saying move it to the 17th. I'm saying if we move it to the 10th and cancel the 24th, if that's a concern for some reason. Otherwise, the agendas have felt somewhat light compared to prior planning cycles.
The only thing would be the 6 weeks in between meetings. And then what, we don't want to then, will you jump into that next meeting with 12 items or 15 items because there's such a gap in between. We've run into that situation quite a bit.
Okay. I'm fine with that. It's just if we're showing up for a relative handful of meetings as of late.
Policy does allow us, like in this case, we could have potentially canceled the meeting if there's less than, I think it's 5 applicants, but being the first meeting of the year, I didn't even broach the chairman to cancel it. But we do have that ability, provided we're not running up in the statutory timeframes with any items. We could do that as well, because we've had meetings we've had to cancel because of weather. It does happen, just not very often.
Mr. Chair, just as a compromise potential, you could move the meeting to the 3rd, cancel the 24th, and instead of blocking the 1st as a definitive one, I would say let's like put hash marks around it as a tentative for May 1st.
I was gonna say that, can we call it, how much time period do we need to call a public meeting?
3 days. Well, we have to notice at least
Well, I
10
mean,
days.
you've got to
in advance.
notice and all that.
Yeah,
but very-
notice 10 days. We would know on the 10th. Or, yeah, we would know on April 10th whether or not we're meeting on May 1. But it would at least be a trigger that we have to talk about it on April 10th, we'd have to talk, are we going to meet on May 1 or next meeting, May 22nd?
Actually, looking at the dates, it was just confirmed today that I'll be back April 1st. So if would we have a quorum? If we
I
didn't.
want to move it from the 3rd. I want to be here.
Okay.
So
We'll extend our trip to Washington.
I guess my suggestion would be to move it from the 3rd, April 3rd to the 10th, and then do May 1st as a tentative meeting. Would that work? We still have it on the 24th?
Yeah,
That
would
works.
give us-
Well, what I would say is we just make it a meeting and we can call the cancellation on the 10th. Because that's, our cutoff is 4:30 that same day.
Okay.
So if we run into that situation, we can actually call that. If there's any continued items from the 10th, we could continue them to the 22nd of May.
Yeah.
And just then cancel that meeting if it works out that way. Generally, I'm gonna say it probably isn't going to, but I shouldn't say but because of that, I would rather have it an actual change and then cancel it if needed rather than tentative. tentatives get tough.
So then in April, we would move the 3rd to the 10th, continue with the 24th,
No, you
No,
cancel the
cancel the
24th.
24th
the
and move it
24th.
to the 1st.
move it to the 1st, okay.
Yeah, that works. You got Easter in there anyways.
Time, are we looking at keeping the same times that we had this year, which would be 6:30, November 1st to April 30th, and 7:30 from May 1st to October 31st?
I would like to
I-
keep that.
Yes, I like that. That's a nice schedule.
Everybody else okay with that?
Works good.
I'm good.
Works good down? Okay.
I would move that we accept the 2025 meeting schedule with the exception of moving the April 3rd to April 10th, canceling April 24th, and having tentative meeting on May 1st, and keeping the times the same, 6:30 November 1st through April 30th, and 7:30 May 1st through October 31st.
Okay, I have a
I'll
motion.
second.
Do I have a second and a second? Do we have any other discussion?
Just a note, Mr. Chairman, for us, it's not a tentative date, we'll just set that as a meeting date, because we're gonna post that as with a deadline and a meeting date, so it's gonna function no differently. I would just, it's
Okay.
not tentative, it's just move the meeting from April 24th to May 1st.
Friendly amendment.
And then for next meeting, could staff update the calendar?
Yeah, we'll get an updated calendar in your packets for the next meeting.
The next
So the
meeting.
next meeting will be February 13th.
Yeah. Okay. And then,
I only had one conflict the whole year. You should be proud of me.
yes. And then the item on it is just the per diems. There's nothing that we can do with that. So that moves us down.
And they are unchanged, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. And so that moves us on down to the minutes from December 12th, 2024. Has everybody been able to look those over? And if so, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from December?
Mr. Chair, I did catch what I may believe would be a typo, and I haven't been paying attention here, so I'm not quite prepared. But it was relative to, I think it was the Kastner petition, wherein Commissioner Holland had said we're going to have a field inspection prior to the January 10th the January 10th meeting. It should have been the 10th, January 16th meeting. Does anybody else see that, or am I?
I got it, Mr. Felger. And I will make that correction.
Am I right, or am I wrong?
Barry said he-
Correct.
Yep, Barry
Oh,
said you were
okay.
correct, and you would make the
Very
correction.
well, thank you.
Good catch.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the minutes from December 12th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same way. Motion carries. Thank you.
Before we get into that first item, Mr. Chairman, I'll just make an announcement for the members of the public that are here. If anyone is here for the John Fritz request, there was some miscommunication with the township, and he didn't meet with the township, so he requested continuation to the next meeting, so there will be no testimony given on that. If anyone is here, you can give your public comment, and the board will take it, but there's not going to be a presentation on the request itself.
Can I ask a question? Can I come back at the next meeting and
Absolutely,
after I go to the township and they present at the township?
absolutely. So if you don't, and rather than doing it tonight, you guys can just go and then come back at the next meeting in February 13th, and he'll be here. There'll be the full presentation and the full public comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we don't want you to sit through 45 minutes to just hear that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Larry.
So our first item then would be Deborah Kastner. If you want to come up to the podium, please give your name for the record, and we will get started.
Deborah Kastner.
All right, Barry, when you are ready.
Yep, I just got to get to the proper screen here. There we go. Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is continued from the December 12th meeting. The commission conducted a site inspection, and the applicant has provided the parking plan as outlined in that continuation. So I don't have a whole lot more to add. The basics of the request were gone over at the last meeting, as well as some public comment. What I'm going to do is I'll quick go through the slides that we had the last time. So this is kind of the layout of the property, as well as this is the updated parking plan with the approximate number of spaces. The totals there indicate about 125 spaces. So that is what we have received. We did get the official township response, which was not had at the last meeting, and they did recommend approval with the only condition being an annual township review.
Okay.
Crap.
Is there anything you would like to add to that?
Nope. that's-
Okay. Before we go to the board here, is there anyone for the public that would like to comment? If you want to come up, give your name, please, for the record, and if you want to have a seat.
Thank you. My name is Tim Tufts, and I'm a resident just down the road. So part of what I'm here for today is just twofold, to better understand a little bit more about kind of not only the conditional, from what I'm understanding, it's you're saying it's an interim use permit, not a conditional? Okay. And could someone help me understand what an interim is versus a conditional? Interim means what? What is the difference there?
Yeah, I'll take it. Well, a conditional use permit, generally speaking, through statute and case law, have different connotations attached to it. Generally, there's no sunset, although commissions can establish and put criteria on timeframes and that kind of thing. Case law indicates that that's not necessarily the accurate. If challenged, you put yourself in a pretty precarious position. Interim use permits, as established by statute, allow us to put definitive sunset dates based on a number of different criteria. We do have to establish that date, which we can do through different things. So, for instance, one of the common ones we use is change in business operation or ownership upon transfer of the property, those types of things. Those trigger and basically a extinguishment of the use, unless that new buyer or new operator or whatever comes back in and reapplies. So that allows us to adjust things. If things sell, a lot of times the new people don't operate the same, and we can now adjust things according to what the new operators are going to propose. So that's one of the primary differences between a conditional use permit and an interim use permit.
Excellent. Yeah, that was the basis of my question. Is part of it was, and first of all, I just want to say that they seem like great people. You guys, doing everything, you're doing great over there. Part of it is I'm just trying to understand what takes place with this particular interim use condition. My question, which I think you answered, was, could it be sold and then passed on, which it sounds like that does not happen in this situation.
That is the big difference that's one of the big differences between the two,
Yeah.
where if another person wanted to come in and operate, they get absolutely what's here.
But they have to start the process over.
Right, and
all
then
of
for
it.
us, if they do expand, then it's more difficult for us to then
Yeah.
do an after-the-fact kind of complaint system to get them to
Right.
bring into something that is now either compliant or amend stuff. So this gives us more leeway.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I moved out here to have kind of a rural, quiet setting. I just picked up the notes here just before getting here, so that helped me understand this a little bit more, meaning I wasn't sure how many events could take place. So for instance, could they have, 5 a week? Or, is it conditioned in terms of how many they can do? Therefore, I'm not listening to that every single weekend with something going on up there. So that was part of trying to understand that, but I did pick that up. So thank you for that. That makes a lot more sense. Part of my ask behind that was, are they able to sell it? Therefore, does that create a value for their property instantly upon getting this particular thing approved? So I think we've established that. That helps me understand a little bit more. So thank you. As far as the parking was concerned, I mean, I do have some concerns about that. They were, I did do the walkthrough, came up and just looked it over when we were there, when the board was there a few weeks ago. And I know that it's, it's being really looked at as like Zone B. There's a long road or approach that's coming in there. And we've got some of these other buffer parkings and things. And when we're talking, I believe the number's 125 people total maximum. And I'm not sure what we have for spaces. You're saying
125 is what's listed there.
125 spaces for cars or 125 people?
125 spaces.
Spaces. Okay. So we're looking at 125 spaces. I was there. I'm still confused on where they're all going to go. Maybe I'm just not catching it or seeing it correctly. I see Zone D there. There was no parking space there. Maybe that's going to be put in. I don't know. Yes, we have a field parking. I don't know if that's going to be utilized. It just looked like it was inadequate for that number of cars, and I was just curious if that looks good to you. Beyond that, I'm wondering if there's going to be any parking utilized off of 106 on Braddock, because I've seen that done before, and I don't know if that's safe. You got people walking back and forth on 106. I'm just curious if we're also stating they need to contain their parking within the parameters of the area.
So myself and my staff just went through most of these types of venues that we've permitted over the years, and nearly every single one prohibits parking on public right-of-ways.
Okay.
So that is likely a condition. I can't speak for the commission, but from a staff perspective, that is one of the conditions we generally include. Whether or not the commission adopts them, that's up to the commission, but we recommend prohibiting parking on public right-of-ways.
Yeah.
That's pretty standard condition when we deal with these venues. And we require them to meet their parking requirements and demands within the property and not on public right-of-ways.
Okay. Yeah, because it's just 106 is a very dangerous road, and I think we all seen that area, and there's no shoulder, and it's if it's people walking around at night, things going on. I just wanted to make sure that that was at least acknowledged. So as far, we talked about parking. The one question I had in terms of, is there a condition on how many people can be on property at an event? Do we have that established?
Well, the one of the issues is from a regulatory and enforcement standpoint, that type of condition is extremely hard to enforce. It's not necessarily impossible, but for us to enforce that, we basically have to be out there with a clicker saying how many people are on the property. So it's a little easier to do potentially vehicles, which that's kind of how we framed this one, and just kind of threw in a number. But it's more vehicles based on the parking plan than number of people.
Right.
Because the number of people is extremely difficult. We've, as I can recall, I've been with the county 25 years, and as I can recall, we've had one instance where we were actually able to do something with a number that was being exceeded because we had YouTube videos and other things that clearly,
Yeah.
I think the limit was 75 people and there were over 400. Unless there's that big a discrepancy, it's extremely hard because anybody looking at a crowd, is it 100 or is it 120?
Sure.
You can't tell.
Yeah.
And so they're extremely hard. So we do have ones out there with those conditions, but I think it's advisable to try to find other ways to limit than actual numbers of people because it's extremely hard.
Yeah, again, I believe they're going to try to adhere to all these things. I look at it as the future. You start something like this, and then if they potentially sell and they move on, and we go, oh, it's already kind of there. We've established that. They move in, we go through this process again, that gets approved. I look at that and go, I just want to make sure that we're, if the people here that I believe are going to be good about it are now gone, what's going to happen next? So when you talk about not really being able to police that or at least look at that in terms of watching it, I mean, does that mean we could bus in 1,000 people and we've got 125 cars parked there?
A very good point. There again, these are discussions that the commission's gonna have to have. I don't set the
No,
conditions,
no,
they
I'm sorry, I
do.
should ask you guys, I'm sorry. So you know, that's part of the concern is now we're saying, okay, well, we can get around that one. We're gonna start busing in, you know, we got 10 buses showing up today. They dump off the people, they leave. And now we've got a party of 1,000 up there and we've got a facility, which you know, I'm not sure how many people. I can't believe there's not a fire code or something that says, well, for this size building, so many people can be there at an event.
Oh, there are, and that's part of what's gonna be done and established through the conditions. The building as it sits right now hasn't been approved for anything as far as public occupancy, neither of them. The two buildings they're requesting are a portion of the pole building where Zone C is, and then the open air pavilion. Neither of those two at this point have been approved for human occupancy of the public, which will have to be done as part of this. And so those are conditions that if the commission grants this, those are non-negotiable conditions.
Okay, so that helps a little bit. It's felt really loose, what you just stated of, well, we don't know and we're not gonna police it and we'll see what happens. So that's fine. That's what I wanted to hear, just understand a little bit more. This property is associated with 2 lakes. We've got Cedar, I don't know if you can bring that back, there you go. And North Lake, their property is a portion of those lakes, lucky them. Then, as you can see, even around the corner, it's on Cedar, so they have access to it, and they have access to North. Is there any ideas towards having boats, pontoons, bachelorette parties, wedding parties going out on the lakes, setting up docks, setting up anything like that? Is there anything that stipulates that can or cannot be done?
Those are rules that my office does not enforce. Those are based on DNR regulations. If they have water access, my understanding is they can put out docks.
Right,
They could potentially have a pontoon and uses within the surface water.
right, but business, commercial, or it does not matter?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, which seems surprising to me. So there is as many docks and or boats as that a potential people would want.
Sheriff's Department issues docks permits. I don't know exactly what those regulations are. They're not part of our land use ordinance
Alright.
as far as numbers.
Yeah, that's because I live on the lake and I just want to make sure that just curious if that's something that could be,
I know individual
Probably in the
properties that have 3 or 4 docks.
Right.
So it's,
right, that's kind of where I was going with it. Let's see, what was the other thing I wanted to talk about? Noise, so it sounds like we have parameters around timeframes. 10:30 music has to be off. 11 o'clock shuts down and people go home, is that what I understand? And so I know after being up there and taking a look, they've got doors that come open and closed. Is it open? Can they continue to, have it's a band, I would assume, or a DJ or something going on. That's okay to have open forums and just open up that music and have it open to the public?
up to the commission to determine how they want to
We'll
condition
get-
it.
I guess give us your concerns and we have to discuss it. I
Yeah,
can't give
I
you
guess
an
my
answer to
concern
these
would be on
things,
the
so.
front side would be
Yep.
that the door can be opened up, but they got a band in the back. It's directed straight out at the lake. And from who knows what, 8:30 to 10:30, we're listening to music pushed out on the lake. So I know that there's a back door that goes to the backside with beautiful stables and things that they've got up there. So I didn't know if it could be something where that's not just constantly open and it's loud and it's being broadcasted across the lake versus trying to help contain it. So that was just a curiosity question more than anything else.
We'll discuss it.
Okay.
I mean, that'll be a conversation we'll have.
Thank you. As far as other things that go on there, are fireworks permitted? Celebration, fireworks, I don't know, just curious. I know I'm not against fireworks. 4th of July, I'm all for it. But if it's September 30th and they're lighting fireworks off at 10:30 at night. Is that acceptable or not? I'm curious. I'd like that to be at least talked about. And that's really it. My point today was just to try to understand some more about this because it seemed a little loose. And when I hear some of that loose portion of it, I'm not a big fan of businesses coming out into residential areas. I assume this is considered a business. I don't know if it's nonprofit, profit. Does that matter to the board? Is that something that's looked at?
That's just a matter of getting a conditional use permit, how they're using it.
Yep.
Or not a conditional, interim use permit.
It is.
You know, I mean, we have businesses throughout the county
Right,
within agricultural land, running businesses, so.
correct. Right, so
Quite right,
I didn't know if it was a nonprofit. I didn't know if it was considered a write-off in terms of I see it's tied to the horse portion of this is,
What they do as a business is their business. I mean, we're not running the business or
Understood.
anything like that. So
right, but you're also,
they're here for an interim use permit
right,
of a.
but it's also tied to commercial agricultural tourism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that has to be tied to something on that farm, right? Which is what? The fact that they have horses?
That they have a farm.
That they just have a farm. Anyone with a farm can say, I want a commercial agricultural tourism. They can just call that up and say, that's what I'd like to do.
Yep.
Okay, I just was curious how,
Whether you're selling pumpkins, whether you're having
right,
this type of thing, whether you're having a riding stable,
yep,
whether you're selling sweet corn,
okay, that's part of that.
falls
Okay,
underneath.
very good. That was my question. I was just curious how you tie that into the horses. I wasn't sure what that meant. Okay,
There would be a condition attached to that as well, because the horses require a feedlot registration. If at any point that registration lapse or no longer exists, the use can no longer exist.
okay. Yeah, that's really it. I just wanted to understand it better. Taking you guys out of the equation, if this moves on and someone new comes in, I wasn't aware of this not being able to sell it. I thought possibly this just stuck with the property. And so, I mean, that relieves a lot for me because I believe these two are going to run it well. I've seen that so far. And I just wanted to understand that it just couldn't be moved on and then we get a whole new cast of characters that walk in and things go the opposite direction quickly. So that's it. I've said my piece. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anyone else that would like to comment on this matter? Gentleman there in the back, you want to come up, please, and give your name for the record?
Chris Northensgold. I live on the north side of the ranch. So you did your site visit. I'm still concerned about everybody on all sides of this property has spent a lot of money to purchase these properties, to build homes, to live there. And I want you guys to consider that we didn't buy these properties to be watching 125 vehicles drive by our homes, to listen to music all day, every weekend during the summer. And I feel like it impacts our property value negatively by having this venue approved. And you guys really need to consider, if it was you on the border of that, would you want to hear that noise? Would you want to see those vehicles? Would you want to deal with all those people when you moved out there for the quiet? So I'm not against them being able to host events. It's just there are certain aspects of this permit that are going to impact me and everybody else on the perimeter of this property. You know, and it's to the point where I didn't move out there and make a decision to get a permit to impact all of my neighbors negatively. That's what's happening right now. And you need to consider that we all have to listen to the events every weekend when we're doing our yard work, and there's gonna be traffic, and it's never gonna end. Because as soon as this gets approved, I don't wanna go down that path of being in a neighborhood and this is accepted. This is something that you see happening in like Princeton, that's rural. This is not a Monticello event center. This should be something that's in town or on the edge of town. But there's a lot of properties, and I don't think if you were to do a survey of most of the people, I'd be surprised if you had more than 25% of the people that wanted this to happen. They just don't want to be associated with being opposed to it. And someone has to say it. It's just, this is not going to be a positive attribute to our neighborhood. Unless you put stipulations on it that we cannot have outdoor music, because I'm not blasting music from speakers, in my backyard, impacting people behind my house or next to me. That's what that's doing. It is 80 acres, but I heard it last year, and the noise carries very easily. And I don't want it to be a problem where I'm having to call the sheriff's department every weekend because we're listening to music at 9 o'clock at night. The permit should really, you should consider putting limitations on what they can do with their outdoor venues that doesn't impact us negatively. Because I can't really think of one positive impact for anybody that's around this ranch that this permit would be positively impacting us as residents. So I don't see the reason why, you should allow them to be able to do tourism, but I don't think weddings should be part of that. Do events there for the horses, for the riding. I don't understand why we need to rope weddings in with the permit. Can it be something where they're allowed just to host riding events? If it's a commercial ag permit, they can, do riding lessons, riding events. I don't understand why you have to have weddings associated with it where we're blasting music till 10:30 at night. Is that something that we can remove from the permit?
We'll discuss it.
Okay,
I mean, you're asking for it, so we will discuss it.
okay.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, on this map, can you tell me where your piece of property is? Because
Yep, 10:30
10:30.
up,
I'll get to it.
Way up at the
1030 at the top.
top left, Jeannie.
Top
here?
center.
Right there, yep.
So if you zoom the map out, which maybe you can't on that. Okay.
right here.
So I'm,
Green one right here.
that property right there. So
So,
my home is situated at the top of up towards the road on that property. So the elevation is high.
because I have to say, when I was standing outside of the venue, I would have needed binoculars to see a house. I did not see your house.
Well, yeah,
There's
you
a lot of
probably
acreage.
couldn't see it. I don't think you can see my house from their property.
And then am I right that there's a tree berm to the back end of that property?
Well,
I saw a lot of trees.
yeah, so I'm not concerned about on the back side of the property. If you look at the front of the property where it borders Afton Avenue, we're built on the field portion of that. So
You built up in here.
yes, that's correct. So the sound carries from the venue across that, because the elevation of the venue is similar to where we are. I think we're even a little bit higher than it. But we could hear it clear as day. And all I'm concerned about, really, my main concern is noise. I don't want it to be an issue where I'm having to be dealing with it all summer long. So if we can put some sort of limitation on outdoor music that, or PA systems, or anything that's gonna be directional noise that, and I mean, even like his point, it carries right across the lake. And it's gonna carry, I guess, wherever you're having the venue. That's really my big thing is, can we get by with no outdoor music?
I have a question. You said last year you heard the music every weekend?
No, we were working at our home, like a weekend, in the spring. We were putting drain tile in, and we heard, like Mexican music, like fiesta music playing. And it was clear as day. And I said it, I think at the last meeting when I came here, I spoke with almost everyone on the west side of their property, on the Wright development side. And every person said their concern is noise. Up till the property, basically the property 402, which is at the top of your map on the left, that was the last house that said he really didn't notice the noise much. South of him, all of those properties said it was very easy to hear the noise if they had outdoor speakers going. And I only noticed it the one weekend because we were just out there. So I don't think you can see my house from there, to answer your question, but you can definitely, you could hear what was going on.
Am I wrong? I thought this was limited to like 15 events max for the year.
Yeah, we'll get into some of that
Okay.
discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's 15 events for the year, that's basically a wedding every weekend in the summer, or most weekends in the summer.
I think 4 of them were weddings.
They could limited to 4 weddings total. Okay.
Yeah, my memory serves me right.
We'll get
get
into that once we
talk
get
about that.
discussing. So
Okay.
I guess, do you have any other
Nope,
concerns?
that was just my concern, really. I just wanted you guys to look at it as if this would be impacting you. You know, if you were living in the vicinity of this area, would you want it, and would you think it's a positive attribute to have in your neighborhood? And really consider that, please. So, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on this? If not, I guess the applicant can come back up, and if you want to have any rebuttal to some of the things they've brought up, you're welcome to do that, or we will bring it back here to the board.
Oh, by nature, I'm not combative, but I feel like there's a couple things. I also try to deal in facts. So as for the noise he's referring to, I think he moved in about May, I'm not positive. He's referring to one time. And most of the events happened after that point. So, and I'm not asking for 1,000 people. So like when those things are mentioned, I'm not coming back defending, but I've asked for what I'm looking for. So,
All right. I guess, does anybody here on the board have any questions for the applicant?
I do.
Go ahead, Pat.
Just in terms of the size, you can only fit 125 cars. The narrative that you have suggested maybe up to 125 people, trying to get at this idea of right-sizing what we're doing.
yeah. Realistically,
Yeah, I want to,
yeah, we're only looking for up to about 125 people.
Yeah.
So that's really 40 to 65 cars if you factor in, usually people come together in a car. But I didn't want to ask for less and then have somebody come and go, well, she only asked for this many cars. So, but the building itself and the area, we wouldn't want to have many more.
Is 125 your upper limit on people?
We've had more, but it's what I'm comfortable with.
Right, so if we put in a condition, difficulty in tracking it aside for a second, if we put in a condition that said the event shall have not more than 125 people, you're fine with that? In terms of the number of events, and again, sort of going back to the narrative that you've got weddings, you've got corporate events, the neighbor and volunteer appreciation events, and then I think there's a community events. Can you, and I maybe missed this at the last meeting, what's the community events?
An example is the one he's referring to. We called it a Cinco de Derby, and we opened it up to neighbors, the Monticello community, and the response was amazing. We got a lot more people than we expected, but it was our way of saying, hey, thanks, we love our community, come out and have some fun with the horses, and on the farm. So I asked for two, a spring and a fall. It'd be nice to keep it about 120, 125 people. Corporate events, the one we had probably was 20, 22 people. Daytime, 3 to 4 hours. I don't even think the neighbors knew it happened.
So if we think about trying to still right-size things, should we be going ahead with putting a cap on the number of weddings, the number of corporate events, the number of community events, and the number of neighborhood appreciation days? Because I think that you're probably right to suggest that a corporate event is likely to be smaller, it's likely to be quieter. And if the plan is for 4 to 5 weddings, I think something that says 4 to 5 weddings, which can be a major source of noise sometimes, seems reasonable to me. Right? If we're trying to permit the use that you're saying, and worried always about creep, right, on these things, we give people 20 events, and we say, well, we want to make sure that you have enough that you can do what you want to do. And then it's 20 weddings, which is basically every day in the summer on the weekend. That seems like a lot.
Yeah.
And not what you're interested in.
Yeah, and that's, I asked realistically for where we would like to see it go and be approved for it. Our goal, if I wanted to, I could have several more weddings, but we don't want to. We want to have the freedom also to enjoy our property, our neighbors, the lake. So I think I kept it very realistic, what we're asking for. And even the events for volunteers, we're already doing it. I have 30 volunteers. So we do 2 events just for them. We have a barbecue, we provide the food, play games. It would be like inviting your family over.
Okay.
So,
When we talk about the noise, the major source of noise concerns with these sorts of venues comes from amplified music. I'm not so much worried about a boombox as I am about a live band. Talk to me maybe at this Cinco de Mayo event where Mr. Northenskold is saying he heard it. And it's a long ways away, but noise does carry.
yeah.
What was going on at that event?
It was a 5-member mariachi band playing mariachi music.
Amplified?
Not, I didn't think it was, like, people, to me, it wasn't that loud, but maybe to him, he felt it was.
Were there speakers?
I mean amplified, like, were there?
Oh, yeah, they had
They were
little,
all plugged in on
like little,
speakers.
I would call them like boom boxes.
Okay. for that event, I mean, is there a way that we can talk about, directing the noise? Because I do think that if you were to throw the noise to the south out over the lake, that's going to carry to the far side of the lake. Sort of directing any amplified music, is there a way to set it up? And I don't know if this is, I haven't fully vetted this idea, but a way so that the amplified music, let me back up. The amplification is outside or inside? Where are the bands playing?
They were out on the pavilion.
Okay,
Interesting, that event, that was one of the first events I met the majority of my neighbors. They came to it. So
which direction do you recall the speakers being pointed from the pavilion?
they were north.
Okay. I mean, if we think about directing the amplification within the property, maybe, I don't know, at the other building, I just don't know how that,
Pat, on a situation like that, would it be just having it with inside of the building? The amplified music has to stay with inside. I know the wedding venue by my place was that way when we wrote those permits. I mean, there was no outdoor amplified.
yeah, what was the name of that one? Was that a-
Biak, that was just north of Memphis, and John Biak.
Okay.
Is it correct that you're asking for 4 to 6 weddings, 4 to 5 corporate events, 2 barn dances, and 2 volunteer events? That's what I thought I remembered. So 15 events total, max.
Any other thoughts, Pat?
Not right now, no,
Okay.
thanks.
Any other comments from any of the members?
So I have a question, maybe this is for Barry or Greg. When it comes to the occupancy of the building and they go through an inspection, will it be certified with an occupancy number? Will they put an occupancy number?
Fire code?
That, the building official would do it to yeah, he establishes the occupancy.
Okay,
Per fire code, right?
Yes.
okay, that was number one. And then with fireworks were brought up. Have you ever done anything like this on your property?
Yes, we have. Actually, we did it at my son's wedding, but he got a permit through a licensed, person that does fireworks. And it went fine, no problems. After that, we never approved fireworks, but there was one incident where somebody shot them off, but we immediately shut them down, just because we don't want the liability. So that's our own personal feeling about it, because it was a dry summer. We don't want to risk things going on fire, people getting hurt.
So if, and I'm not sure, since you said that it only happened once, right?
It's expensive.
What's that?
It's expensive.
Yeah, we know that.
To speak, you have to be at the podium.
So if we would put a stipulation on that in the ordinance or in our recommendations, would you be okay with that?
On an event, like say if we did it personally, meaning
Well,
the
it would
kids
be an
were.
event.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I'd be okay with it. And we've already changed our contract to prohibit it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Any other comments? We've already gone to the public, so we'll stay up here the board. So I guess the one thing I'd like to bring up is as far as a wedding venue like this, and the public asked, you'd like us to look at it as if we had one in our neighborhood. I have one, literally within half a mile of my house. They're no longer there, they've moved, their IUP went away. That was John and Biak. They had a barbecue, they had a shed somewhat similar to what they have, completely finished off up in the corner. They had live bands within the shed that was within their conditional use permit at that time, or IUP, it's not conditional. And again, we live on public roads. Yes, traffic by mine, I live on a township road, gravel road, dust, all of those things. But I live on a public road. People are allowed to use the road like anybody else. And also, I live in an area where my family's been there for 100-some years. So if you really want to get into it about having a quiet road and people moving in and building homes, it's growing up. We live in Wright County. Wright County is the fastest growing county in the state of Minnesota. We are growing over 9% every year, and that is the fastest growing county in the state of Minnesota. We live here. The more people there are, the more we continue, the more people want to do things. The more people want to have weddings in the country, the more people want to go dirt biking on roads, do different things. So I think we have to understand we're going to have to get along with each other. And most of this properties to the west, what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we rezoned that. This board up here rezoned that whole area. We allowed those homes to be built there. This was a farm, been there for a long time. It's a farm. And now you have all these homes here, and they're not wanting this in their backyard. So I think the board has to understand that too, that, you know, these people are trying to run a business. If this was a farm and they were running 1,000 acres, there'd be corn dryers going there, going right over the top of the lake, going out there 24 hours of the day for a month in the fall. It would be nonstop, steady corn dryer going. I'm a farmer. I understand that. We live in the country. So we got to kind of keep those things into consideration up here and not, I mean, these people are trying to run a business. A farmer runs a business too. He doesn't have to go through these permits and have stipulations put on him, but he can run up and down the road with a manure spreader and spill manure on the road, and people drive through it and cars stink, and you pull it in your garage and you complain about the farmer. Here, we're putting conditions on a venue that they can only do it so many times a year. They have all kinds of regulations that the county is putting on them. So I think we got to consider some of those things also, along with the other things that are being brought up.
Chairman Mall, at the site visit, what I got out of it, you know, just walking around, it was a beautiful piece of property. And I felt like it wasn't, they don't want to commercialize their property, they want to share their property. That's different than I want to make a whole lot of money. I feel like they want to share their property. It was, and literally it was like acres that you didn't see a house. And granted, yes, it does, like, the sound will travel. But I also I grew my kids up in the country and moved into the city. And there is not a Friday and Saturday night that goes off that we don't hear fireworks. Like, literally. And the fire chief lives in the same neighborhood and has a dog that goes crazy, and it gets so irritating. But that's part of your neighbors, and, you know, if they get caught, And I appreciate what you said, that it was a liability and that you'll shut that down. But I do feel too that you guys are conscientious. Just that site visit was very eye-opening and just a beautiful piece of property. And I think anybody who can get married there is very lucky. And I too think, you know, like you said, you're not gonna have it every weekend. You could easily have a wedding there every Friday, Saturday night of all, from May until late September, October, because people would flock there. You guys have a gold mine there, but I appreciate that you're doing it for the right reasons. And so for that reason, like I am in support of going forward with whatever stipulations the board figures out.
Thank you.
I had the same impression when we toured it. I still want the truck. But a beautiful little, setup, very much feel, as Commissioner Holland had said, that they want to share their property. And I appreciate you could have it, you could book it every night of the week. But had the same sentiment that I think that you're not asking, for a whole lot of events, 15 events, that you change your contract to say there's no fireworks. And I also believe that, I grew up in the country on a farm. There's noises going all the time and smells and all those things. But, if your neighbor does something, like, let's say one of your weddings, the music does get a little loud, drive down and have a conversation about it. Maybe, you guys will go, oh, wow, this was facing this way and it shouldn't have, we didn't catch that. Thank you for letting us know. We'll pay more attention. I mean, I think communication is a big thing and I'm in favor of it.
Is, I guess, another thing to discuss, you have stated that there will be alcohol served. Is that something the board is going to need, law enforcement? I mean, how are you going to control?
We
alcohol
require,
serving?
permits, like either the caterer has to have a permit or they have to get an insured, like licensed, they have to show proof that they have insurance and somebody who can serve alcohol. We don't just let them serve their own alcohol. So, and again, for liability's sake, we do it that way. So the weddings we've had, most of the caterers have licenses to serve alcohol.
Okay. Ken, you have a question?
Mr. Chair, ma'am, as a follow-up to that question, now, when they did serve alcohol or anything, did you ever experience any difficulties with the residents? Or was there security on site, or was it not an issue?
We haven't had an issue. I mean, we're on site, and I usually have 2 or 3 people that I pay to be on site, just to kind of keep track of, we don't impose on our guests, but we have eyes on.
Right. Do you have like a deputy then show up, or you hire security?
We haven't. One of our volunteers, her husband is a deputy, so we could, but we haven't, and we, up to date, I'm not saying we could never have a
Right.
problem, but we have not had
I
problems.
may have missed that in your narrative, but is that part of your plan, to have security on site during weddings?
Well, we haven't made that as part of the plan, only because we're there. Like, we would just not have an event if we weren't there, to keep things under control. And if we felt like they were out of control, we would call the police ourselves.
Very well, thank you.
Commissioner Felger, the commission has put that as a condition on some, but it is not, we didn't find that to be consistent through all the permits. So thank you for bringing that up. It's a good piece of discussion as staff when we were going through the list of potential conditions. That is something that we did talk quite a bit about, but in a situation like this where your event, especially here where your events can have a very drastic difference in number of people, we didn't want to just write a condition for it without having more discussion on it, so we chose just to left it out of what was in your packet. Like in this case, if you have a small corporate event with 10 people and, you know, they do have a vendor there and they want to serve beer, having an officer on duty anytime alcohol is served seems a little bit onerous. So that is a piece of discussion that is, at least from a staff standpoint, I'd love to hear it so that we have some guidance moving forward when we, you know, get more applications for this kind of stuff.
All right. Mr. Chair, just a comment too, along with my fellow commissioners. It appears that the applicant has applied for what I would consider a modest operation, very modest. You know, if I can do the math correctly here, and I know math is not one of my strong points, having spent the 3 best years of my life in 3rd grade. That's a joke. But
We're laughing inside.
Are you?
We're laughing inside.
Okay, but in any event, it looks as though you're having about 15 events a year planned, okay? Over the course of 7 months. That's what? Average 2 a month? Really? You know, we can talk about our neighbors and making noise and all that. I happen to live out in the country too. Lived out on 40 acres for about 40 years now. And my experience, of course, is that, yeah, Mr. Mole, Mr. Chairman, everyone else, yeah, there's a hell of a lot of noise going on out in the country. A lot of combines, a lot of tractors, a lot of shooting, a lot of motorcycles. I guess my chief complaint is not so much that, because that's just part of where we live, is in Ag County, at least it used to be. My chief complaint is people that live on smaller lots, thinking they live on 40 acres, driving their motorbikes over these little jumps and things. That's what I hear all summer, and it's irritating to me. I mean, I'll put up with the ag noise and all that, but when it comes to people moving out smaller acreages and just raising cane out in the country because they think they can, that's what bugs the heck out of me. So I take sort of a reverse position on what we might have heard from some testimony here tonight. But I think that's a modest request. It is a nice piece of property, and folks, it could be a whole lot worse. They could be asking for a whole lot more onerous activities out there, and I think they are not. They've kept it down to what I might call either modest or a bare minimum. So I'm in full support of this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other comments? Pat, do you have any concerns?
So there is a, you know, a sense when you're out in the country, and there's all sorts of different circumstances. You know, Dan, I don't know whether the event center moved to you or you moved to it. Certainly in this area, we have seen and we have overseen the development of small lots, relatively speaking. Large lots for people coming from the city, but smaller lots nonetheless, and it wasn't without some heartburn in doing that, and we set ourselves up for decisions like this, and we're changing as a county. We're no longer the agricultural centered that we were as much, and it's going to keep going that way. I think that there is some balance to be given for the landowners who we have said, go ahead, make these smaller, go buy and build your house on these smaller lots, because we understand you want to live out in the country where it's largely quiet-ish, or you have true agricultural noises. It's a long way of saying I wonder whether we can, through the conditions, make it somewhat more staggered, so that it isn't for 8 days in June, when you're home on the weekend trying to enjoy the limited nice weather that we get here, that those 8 days are jammed full of music and noise. And I don't think there's gonna be a ton of noise. You might be able to hear it, right? The same way that as I sit down on my house, not far from where this is at, I'm on 37, I'm about a quarter mile from the road, and I can hear these things. You know, the truck's going clear as day. So the sound moves a quarter mile in a hurry, and it's there, but it's not a jet engine, right? It's not particularly loud, but I don't know, I'm just having some thought about whether we can limit this so that, you know, events are scheduled so that there's not more than 3 weekend days in a month that are used. Something reasonable so that folks can know that there's gonna be some.
But on that, on the other side of the coin, if they use 8 of them up, they can only do 8 for the rest of the year. You know, I mean, if you limit them, now every month, we're gonna get 2 or 3. But if they all of a sudden in 1 month have a run, well, then the rest of the year is gonna be quiet. So, I mean, it's a balance, and I know that's what you're asking for.
It is, and I
for
don't know which one
Yeah,
is preferred or not, and I get the sense that these owners aren't looking to have a high-volume operation where they are busy from sunup until sundown, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, catering to a bunch of people coming onto the property. It does feel far more sporadic than that. So that was, whether you talked me out of it or I talked myself out of it.
and as far as music goes, yes, I mean, they've moved on. There's some other people living there that are having personal parties. And yes, I've got trees, I've got a buffer, and they moved in on me. I've been there many, many more years than them. And yeah, you can hear it. You can sit down on the patio at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night at the fire, and you can hear, it's like a radio playing. It's not necessarily annoying as long as they're playing country music, but you can hear it.
Yeah.
But it isn't, for me, it isn't where I'm gonna sell my place and move on.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, it's only a few nights. Some nights you're out, some nights you're not. In the house, you don't hear it, you know, so.
But I'm prepared to try to make a motion that would address my
Okay, well,
thoughts on things here.
Pat, can I say something to you too? I get this sense, and hopefully I'm not gonna offend anybody by saying this, that the owners are my age. They aren't gonna wanna do a wedding every weekend. I'm telling you, it's too much work. You know, I just think it's kind of a hobby for them in their retirement, is my guess.
Yep.
we're ready for a motion if you'd like to put it. Do we still have discussion once we get a motion on the floor?
Okay. Make a motion to approve an interim use permit for a commercial agricultural tourism use that includes wedding and community events on the property and within existing structures based on the narrative plans and discussion with the following conditions. 1, events are limited to the months of May through November with no more than 15 events allowed, of which not more than 6 will be weddings. No more than 100 cars per event with parking following the plans presented. Parking is prohibited on public roads and rights of way at any time. Number 3, no more than 135 guests per event. Number 4, no fireworks shall be allowed. Number 5, except in the event of emergency, an owner must be present during all events. Number 6, overnight stays of any kind are prohibited. Number 7, amplified outdoor music is allowed during the wedding ceremony only, and speakers shall be oriented in such a manner as to reduce the potential for excess noise to leave the property. Parenthetical, direct the music toward the pole building, close parenthetical. Any other amplified music is limited to inside the fully enclosed building, and steps shall be taken to reduce the potential for excess noise to leave the property. open parenthetical, e.g. close the doors, close parenthetical. All music must cease by 10:30 p.m. Number 8, wedding events are limited to Friday through Sunday, must start not earlier than 11 a.m., and all guests must be off-site by 12 a.m. Number 9, smaller weekday events, Monday through Thursday, have operating hours of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., May through November. Number 10, all food must be catered. Number 11, the use of any buildings by the public is prohibited until all required permits are issued, inspections conducted, and certificate of occupancy granted. Number 12, portable toilets must be provided according to the letter from the Wright County Environmental Health Officer. 13, any signage must meet the requirements of the Wright County Code of Ordinances. Number 14, this approved commercial agricultural tourism use is only valid as long as the feedlot registration remains up to date. Number 15, this permit shall immediately and automatically expire upon transfer of the property, termination of any lease agreement, or any material change in the business operations or ownership.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion?
Real quick, Mr. Chairman, what I did forget to add in was the township to review in 1 year with subsequent review at an interval established by the township.
Is that something you're
Yes.
willing to add to your motion?
Yeah.
Yep.
Dan?
Mr. Chair, I do have some discussion.
Absolutely.
I knew.
I know this will shock everybody, but I was actually thinking along Pat's line when it came to the number of cars, of 100 cars. I'm pretty good at looking at spaces and how many cars can park out in that area. And that was kind of a number I came up with, that if you get over 100 cars in this lot, or in this property, in these zones, it will be tough. And thinking along that line, my feeling was that 100-car limit would help to decrease the number of people coming on, so they wouldn't go beyond what they're actually requesting and saying, that 125 people is what they like to have. And I was thinking that by limiting to 100 cars, it would help to keep those numbers down without putting a limitation on the numbers, so that we would have to worry about keeping track of how many people in addition to cars were there. And I'm open for rebuttal.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so they're separate conditions.
Yep.
Either way, if there is a violation that is alleged and is being investigated, somebody's going to go count cars, or somebody's going to have to go count people. And so there's no easy fix to the compliance, and this just says, it means to the idea of, if somebody buses people in, I would like to have an upper limit that's reflective of what the owners have said, so that it doesn't happen.
Okay, and my question on that is, how do you keep track of that? Barry, how do you keep track of the people?
You don't.
You don't.
He doesn't until somebody calls and says, these guys are hosting 500 people. And by the time Barry gets out there, it's 2 days later. So nothing can actually happen at that time. And then they say there was a bus here, and here's the picture of the 50 cars that were here. A bus plus 2 people per car, and you're over the limit.
And at that point, we'd be going through a revocation process.
Right.
Or coming back and trying to amend to ask for more. Those are the two pieces to the process.
But it
So-
stays within the process. With the numbers that's been laid out within the motion, it keeps it into the process.
Yep.
Commissioner Malberg, did you, I might have missed that condition because I was trying to write some stuff down. Did you put a limitation on people as well?
Yeah, he said
Number
100.
3 is no more than 135
135.
guests allowed.
You had to write fast to keep up with them.
And I wasn't able to, but I was trying.
Yeah.
And so I missed that.
I have it written out, and you can steal a copy of it when.
Yeah, you can give that to Ann. More beneficial for her than me because she'll write it up and then I'll just copy and paste it into whatever I need.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion on the floor?
Nope.
Good job.
If there's no other
Oh,
discussion,
what, just one bit, Mr. Chairman, just wanted a little explanation on the signage thing. So currently, there is a sign out there. The sign does not meet current setback requirements for signs. So the two options they're gonna have is to either remove the sign, move the sign to meet the required setback, or apply for a variance to keep the sign in its current location. So just an explanation on that, because when you went in, I wasn't at the site inspection, but there is a sign there. That sign doesn't meet the setback from property lines and road right-of-ways and center lines of roads.
Is that irrespective of the commercial, agricultural, tourism component of this?
Correct.
Okay.
Even if it was just to say, this is Kastner's farm, it would need to get moved off.
okay? Do we have any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same way. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Number 2 on our agenda tonight.
Well, as stated at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Chairman, I can jump right into that. That's a jump. Just 1 second,
Guys,
Mr. Chairman.
thank you.
Deborah.
Good luck.
So depending upon your number of people, those are best times for you to one handicap accessible. So keep that. Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to make sure she got what she needed.
2 is a Fritz Company.
So the Fritz Company, there was a misunderstanding at the township level. He's not here. He requested continuation, so there's a motion in your packet to handle that matter.
Okay. Does somebody want to make that motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to continue the matter to the February 13th, 2025 meeting at the applicant's request.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same way. Motion carries. Do we have anything else we need to discuss?
Only thing I got is I've already made the changes to the calendar. I got them sent to the printer, so if you want to bring one home, I made copies for everybody to bring home with you if you want them.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Thank you, everybody, for a good meeting.
I didn't think that was.
My husband wrote like it was dip it in the ink and go on to this, so trust me. His mother was the same thing.